What's going on, everybody? Tim here, back with another video. And today I have a question for y'all. It's a question that I've been asking myself for a while now, a few years now, but I wanted to put it in front of y'all, share it with my YouTube friends and family, and kind of get y'all's take on it. Maybe y'all will have an answer, okay? So my question is, what happens to consumerism when everybody's too broke to consume? What happens to consumerism? What happens to capitalism? What happens to the free market that everybody loves to rave about? What happens to all that when the people get too broke to consume and to spend money because they don't have any? Like, we live in a debt-based economy here in the United States, in the West, debt-based economy, okay? So basically, in order for the economy to continue going, we have to continue going into debt. You don't believe me? Look it up. It sounds crazy. You can look it up. We have to continue accumulating debt to keep the economy going. Basically, we have to keep consuming and consuming more than the amount of money we make. Because if we just consumed at a level, on par with what we make, we wouldn't have to go into any debt. So we have to consume more than we can afford to consume to keep the economy going. But eventually, you run into a problem, right? Because eventually there's more debt out there than there is money to pay it back, right? And then when you throw in, wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living, you realize that and the devaluation of the dollar and so many different things, you realize that people are just getting broker and broker and broker, right? People aren't, now some people, the average person I'll say, are getting broker and broker and broker. Now, the people at the top of the pyramid who are benefiting from the low wages and the consumerism and all this other stuff, the people who make the goods and services and own the corporations and the companies, they're benefiting. But the average person is just getting broker and broker as time goes on. So eventually, you gotta run into a situation where the people just don't have any money to consume. They're too broke to consume. And you also would imagine you eventually run into a situation where people are so deep in debt, they don't want to take on any more debt, or it wouldn't be smart to forward them any more debt or give them any more credit because they already owe you so much money. You think eventually, if things continue the way they're going now, eventually we will run into that point where there's just no more money for people to spend. And then it's well, then who's gonna buy your goods and services? Wouldn't that mean then that all the companies and the corporations go belly up? They go bankrupt because they're not gonna be bringing in any profits because no one has any money to buy anything. So my question is, don't the very greedy companies, corporations, don't they see this? Can't they see this is where we're heading? And if they can, then why the extreme greed? There's always going to be greed, but it just seems these days, it's that extreme greed that's the problem. It's they are just trying to drain every single dollar, cent, penny, IOU, they are just trying to get all our money and then put us in as much debt as possible too. They want all the money we have now and then all the money we're ever gonna have, right? They just want it all. And it's yeah, but if you take that from your customers, then you won't have no more customers. And you need customers to stay in business. So it's just don't they see? Couldn't they have just kept it at 10% greed, 30% greed, there was in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Why now is it just just ultimate 99% greed? They just going for everything. And maybe they're just hey, we're gonna get as much money as possible so we can take care of ourselves before it all comes crashing down. Because I think, anybody who looks at our economy, the way it's going, realizes that it's not healthy. I don't know if there's anybody who's oh, best, people will look at the stock market and be like, oh, the market's up, the economy's good. The stock market is not the economy. Anyway, I don't think anybody who looks like the real economy, the real state of people's finances, the real state of the world, or the country they're in, and is like, oh, it's great. Now, I can only speak for America, so I shouldn't say nobody looks at the country they're in. There might be some countries doing it right. But as far as like America, I don't think most people look and think we're going in the right direction economically, financially. I think most people can look and be like, okay, there's a problem. So you would imagine if the ordinary woman or man on the street can look at that and see, can't the people who make the decisions, can't the people in high positions see that? And like, wouldn't they be like, all right, we gotta keep it so that we can keep this train going? The only way they stay where they're at and are able to like do what they do and make the money they make is if we keep sending the money to the top. But if there's no money, we can't send nothing to the top. Like, wouldn't they want to stave that off as long as possible? But it seems like these days they are doing everything they can do to like speed up the collapse, speed up, whatever's coming, and that's what I just don't understand. I'm like, in the beginning, I don't understand how like you don't have the humanity to want to like take care of your fellow countrymen, or if you're running a company, you don't have the humanity to like want to pay a decent livable wage, or you don't want your employees to be happy? Like, you don't want your employees to be doing well financially? Like, all you care about is the shareholders and your bonus. I don't understand that. Like, that just wasn't the way I was raised. Like, you know what I mean? If I'm up, I want everybody around me to be up. I would pride myself on owning a company where everybody made good money. I don't need to make, as the CEO, I don't need to make, 100 times more than one of my regular employees. No. So that's first. I don't understand that mindset, but I've come to see that a lot of people, that's just the way they see things, and they don't care. But also, I'm like, okay, even if you're not doing it for the other people, wouldn't you want to do it for yourself? You just want, you see the train heading towards the cliff, and you just hit the gas. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me. I'm like, what do they think is going to happen when like nobody has any money, right? When like when nobody can afford to consume, what's going to happen to consumerism? And maybe this is just an example of, and I kind of think this is what it is. Maybe this is an example of everything going to balance, everything working itself out, and when you set up an economic system that's a little out of, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like how, if you're driving down the road and you just slowly turn to the right, a mile later you'll be all the way to the is this the left, right, or to the left? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like, if you turn your tire slightly, it doesn't seem like you're veering that much, but if you go long enough, you're, all the way on the other side of the road. I think maybe that's kind of how it is if you set up an economic system that's not fair and is like out of whack. Over time, it's just naturally just going to get way out of whack. And then that's going to call for, you're going to need a correction. So I'm thinking maybe that's just the natural cycle if you don't have an economic system that works for everybody, is that eventually, it's just going to get way out of whack and like it's going to have to be corrected. So maybe this is just the natural, byproduct of the system that was set up, is that like now the actions that are taken, like maybe there's just no way back. You know what I mean? Maybe this is the only way forward is this. Maybe they couldn't rein it in now if they wanted to. So it's just like Katie barred the doors head first into a I don't know. It's interesting. But I know since like the early 2000s, people were saying there's going to be a correction, there's going to be a collapse, and people thought they were crazy. I remember back then, people thought they were crazy. Oh no, blah, 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 blah. That's never going to happen. Boom, boom, boom. I feel like for the first time, like in my life, the average person is like, something's got to give. You know what I mean? For the first time in my life, more and more people are kind of like, yeah, I'm ready for it. You know, something's got to give. This can't keep happening. You can't just keep draining the time and the energy and the wealth from the bottom of the pyramid, which is the foundation, which is the base, and expect to, like, for you to be able to stay up at the top of the pyramid. There won't be a pyramid. The whole thing comes crumbling down when the foundation goes. So as I look around and I just see, sadly, like more and more people struggling who shouldn't need to struggle. You know, a lot of people have always struggled because, like, they blew their money, they lived outside their means, all this other stuff. But I think we're seeing a time period where people are like, I can't live without, you know, and it's not funny, but it's like, people are like, I'm doing what I need to do with my money. I couldn't blow money if I wanted to. You know what I mean? Because I've already spent all my money. The credit cards are maxed out. Like, I'm working. The wife's working. The husband's working. The kids is working. We all doing what we're supposed to be doing. It's just the system just is out of whack. It's hard to make it. You know what I mean? It's hard to make it. And I just don't think that, like, this is sustainable. And hence the question, like, what's going to happen when there's no more money to send to the top? Like, what happens to your wonderful consumerism when there's nobody left who can afford to consume? That's just my thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment box below. What do you think's going to happen? Do you think they can turn it around? What do you think the correction, the collapse, or whatever might happen might look like? Do you think we can, on the other side of it, come out of it? Like what are your thoughts? I just want your thoughts. Let's get a discussion going. Love y'all. Talk to y'all later.